demonstrate all you want to on Wall Street. The problem is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
There's a lot in common with the Tea Party. They thought it was unfair. We're bailing out the big guys.
There's a whole generation of Americans right now rising up and saying we were on the right track at one time. Let's get back on that track.
They blame, with some justification, the problems in the financial sector for getting us into this mess. At some level, I can't blame them.
Washington reacts to the Occupy Wall Street protests now entering their third week. Yesterday, thousands of demonstrators marched to New York's Washington Square Park. That was their second mass rally. Meantime, the protests have quickly expanded to other cities, including Los Angeles, Chicago, as well as here in the nation's capital. And this week, politicians of both parties finally realized that these young people could not be ignored. So let's bring back again our roundtable. George, the protesters are railing against Wall Street. It's a lot of what the Tea Party did in the early days. Is there a comparison to be made here?
No, because the Tea Party was the bourgeoisie in revolt, and they immediately went into the business of winning elections and running candidates. I disagree with some of the Republicans. I wish for the Occupy Wall Street demonstrators long life and ample publicity for two reasons. I think they do represent the spirit and intellect of the American left, but also I remember the 1960s. We had 4 years of demonstrations like this leading up to 1968, when Nixon-Wallace vote was 57%, the country reacting against the demonstrators, and Republicans went on to win 5 of the next 6 presidential elections.
I disagree. I don't think it's the same protesters that showed up in the late 60s or early 70s. I think this represent a different movement.
Is it Tea Party like?
Well, Tea Party light, I don't know. I hope it's heavy on coffee and not on tea. But I do believe that it's a legitimate movement that grew out of the public outrage over the debt ceiling debate, when many Americans saw members of Congress basically sitting on their hands doing nothing. These are educated people who cannot find jobs. They have worked hard, played by the rules, and they believe that Wall Street has not been held to account for their actions that created the mess in the first place.
Peggy, do you think that people are too quick to dismiss them?
Maybe. Look, to a certain degree, the Occupy Wall Street folks are reflective of a bitterness that has not gone away in America in the past 3 years, that is accentuated as the economy has gotten worse. A bitter sense out there that Washington and the investment banks of New York tanked the American economy and paid no price for it. That having been said, Occupy Wall Street, these protesters, is nothing like the Tea Party. The Tea Party rose up spontaneously, as I assume these folks have, but they were mature, they had a program, they had a political point of view that they were going to put into legislative action. They made serious political decisions about not going third party. They were real. We don't know yet that these folks are real. Can I tell you, though, the Republican Party should not take the bait of Occupy Wall Street, and they should not do this replaying of 1968 where the Republicans say protesters are bad. The protesters are doing their thing. Let it be.
I think the Republicans are making a huge mistake on this, because I think if I were a Republican candidate or advising a Republican candidate today, I would say adopt this populist movement. Because right now, I think the Republican Party has forgotten who their base is. The Republican Party's base is not Wall Street. The Republican Party's base is a middle-class, small-town, rural vote out there. Yeah. And not to say that the Republicans agree with that, but I think the Eric Cantors and everybody else that is dismissing these folks, if I were Michelle Bachmann or somebody else in that field, I would say, this is a Main Street versus Wall Street problem. These protesters are saying the right thing. They may not have the right policies, but be a populist and be a populist Republican attacking Wall Street.
Okay, we've spoken a lot about them. I'm now going to bring in Jesse LaGreca, who is a blogger for the liberal website Daily Kos, and he's been a fixture at the Wall Street protests. So, Jesse, you've been listening to all of these descriptions of your movement. Where do you come down? I mean, we've talked about it as being immature. It hasn't had policy sort of directives. What is it that you are trying to sort of consolidate around there?
Well, I think the matter at hand is that the working class people in America, you know, the 99% of Americans who aren't wealthy and aren't prospering in this economy, have been entirely ignored by the media. Our political leaders pander to us, but they don't take action. They stand in the way of change. They filibuster on behalf of the wealthiest 1%. They fold on behalf of the wealthiest 1%. So the conversation we need to have is about the future, about what type of country we really want to be. And I think the most important thing we can do in our occupation is to continue to push the narrative that's been ignored by so many pundits and political leaders. I mean, the reality is I'm the only working class person you're going to see on Sunday news, political news, maybe ever. And I think that's very indicative of the failures of our media to report on the news that matter most to working class people.
We are trying our best, Jesse, and I want to
thank you.
I want to ask you, some of your, most vociferous supporters, like our colleague Paul Krugman, has spoken quite glowingly about this populist movement, and you've even heard people around this table saying that it should be harnessed, but also saying that it's the moment now to perhaps try to translate that into some kind of political question, political demand. Is there something that you can make this about?
I think the entire movement is about economic justice. I mean, it's, to me, and this, I'm not speaking on behalf of Occupy Wall Street, I'm just giving my personal opinion. I think it's a matter of economic rights, and I think it's a matter of social rights and social justice. And to the people who would take offense to the word social being placed before justice, I'd invite them to reread the Constitution.
Let me ask George Will, who wanted to ask you a quick question.
Mr. LaGreca, I hear a certain dissonance in your message. Your message is Washington is corrupt, Washington is the handmaiden of the powerful, and a lot of conservatives agree with that. But then you say this corrupt Washington that's the handmaiden of the powerful should be much more powerful in regulating our lives. Why do you want a corrupt government bigger in our lives?
You know, I find that a lot of these conversations about the government tend to deflect away from Wall Street because, let's be honest, the lobbyists have enormous power and they've shut out the voice of American people. So I think we should demand a government that is listening to people, and I find it ironic that when people demand action from their government, suddenly people tend to overreact and say, well, that's out of control government. Our government is a function of our democracy. By attacking the government, we are attacking democracy. So to me, I think, yes, we should ask our government to represent the will of the people. And if the will of people are demanding action, then they should follow suit.
And do you think these demonstrations are going to have momentum? I mean, is it going to continue now, day after day?
Absolutely. People are extremely excited about what we're doing. We're engaging in a direct democracy conversation. I mean, the General Assembly is really the new town hall. And we don't have a filibuster. We don't have lobbyists. We don't have a system that can be co-opted. And I invite everybody to come down and talk to us.
All right. Jesse, thank you so much indeed. I appreciate you being there. Let me ask you, Donna, clearly unions and other democratic organizations are jumping on this. Is this something that the Democratic Party feels will energize it as the Tea Party did the Republican Party?
There's no question that Democrats recognize the strength of this movement. This is a grassroots movement. On the other hand, I don't believe that the party itself should try to lead this. Yes, teachers, firefighters, many others who've been impacted by the ongoing recession, they have a legitimate right to go out there and protest. George, many of these Americans are feeling the effect of the economy, foreclosures. How many Americans out there have lost their homes or their homes are underwater? This is a legitimate movement, and we should not try to marginalize them.
And Peggy, I was stunned by your column this week where you were talking about a group of Walmart moms, and you were talking about people who were taking extraordinary steps to save money, donating blood,
yes,
collecting aluminum cans.
Yes. I think we can all sometimes miss what is really happening in America. America is in distress. It's in immediate distress, paying the bills, foreclosures, etc. But another kind of distress it's under is Americans are smart and they can tell this ain't going to get better for a while. So there is a certain bitterness is too strong a word. Despair is too strong, but maybe very upset and not feeling so great about the future. It seems to me the question about Occupy Wall Street is this. What is your plan? You're going to spend the next 6 months blocking the Brooklyn Bridge? Or are you going to harness a movement into political action, which means getting together with each other in living rooms, deciding...
I'm going to have to ask Jesse that very quickly. Did you hear that, Jesse? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Are you going to harness this into a political movement, or are you going to, hang out for months?
Yeah.
What I find amusing is that now people are looking to us to solve the political problems, and they should. But I'm not going to support one party or the other. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I will encourage you to be a voter. I think we have succeeded tremendously in pushing the narrative that working class people can no longer be ignored. And I think that it's very important that we have this conversation because it's about the future of our country. You know, right now, working class people are being told to sacrifice. We're being told that our future is going to have to be put on hold in the name of austerity. And I can't name a single country that succeeded in solving their economic problems with austerity. So I think the more important thing to do is to come out and speak to us. The town halls that you see are very top-heavy. Our political leaders come and try to sell us a message. They should be listening to us.
All right, Jesse, thank you very much indeed.